Hey everybody, this is Sean from Low Code Approach. Before we hop in today's episode, I want to let you know that we are collecting everyone's thoughts on what topics we should cover for the upcoming season. To submit them, hopefully you're not driving. If you are, wait until you get somewhere safe. But go to aka.ms/low code topic request. That's all one word. aka.ms/low code topic request. And from there, enter what topics you'd like us to cover in the upcoming season. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to get to them and get to the best people at Microsoft to talk to. Anyway, thanks for listening. We're excited to get your thoughts. Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I am Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
On this soapboxless episode today, I am Ken Aguilar, happy to be here, Principal Program Manager inside of Power Apps. And Sean, who do we have with us today?
So today we are joined by Derek Kwan, Principal Product Manager, and we're talking about Power Catalog. And so before we jump into that, Derek, could you tell us a little bit more about, your background and your role and how that got you to work on Power Catalog and what that actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually kind of started off, I guess, my technology career actually at Yahoo, doing ad tech like way back when. I spent a couple of years at Yahoo just across a bunch of different ad tech teams. And I actually started off, interestingly, as like an editor, and I went into like QA, and then I went into product management. And I think a lot of people that have done product, sometimes, especially the ones that started many years ago, had this very windy path where you're, just kind of, you're almost just like this master of none. You're just kind of good at a whole bunch of little things, and you kind of gather that experience from all these different roles that you have. But then I ended up getting a product role at Yahoo, which really then ended up like triggering my product career. After Yahoo, I went to AT&T Interactive, and I was working at their yellowpages.com division, also doing ad tech. And after that, I did something dramatically different. I went to a 20-person startup. I was part of their Series A hires as a head of product. 6 years later, I was the chief operating officer, and we had an exit to Constant Contact, which is really nice, right? I got to be able to build something from scratch all the way to the end. And it actually was a little bit relevant for me for the the Power Catalog project, because then after that acquisition, that's when I came to Microsoft. And then at Microsoft, I was on a Dynamics 365 sales product, and then a Dynamics 365 supply chain before I actually moved into Dataverse. And I've actually only been in Dataverse for about maybe like 8 months or so. But that is when I picked up the Power Catalog project.
Cool. And so could you tell us more? What is Power Catalog? We've been talking about this name, but I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the Power Catalog, it's a workspace where now makers in any organization can publish and acquire what we call like org-specific artifacts or templates into a single place. So I want to differentiate that from these generic out-of-the-box templates you might see inside of Power Apps or Power Automate, which is like a task tracking app, right? Those things are useful, but they're really just more of like a shell. It's like the art of the possible. I can kind of generally take this very base of a thing and build something from it. But let's just say that you have very specific like company branding that you need to put in there, right? And you don't want to have to recreate that over and over again. Like, I don't remember what the hex code is for that particular shade of red, right? But you don't have to worry about that if you could actually customize the templates that you put into this workspace. And then you can extend that to, as an example, you have a whole bunch of super complicated like connectors to these very specific data sources for your organization, like a nonprofit or something else, right? Now you can package all those things together and put it into this place and then reuse it yourself later, and other makers can use it yourself. So yeah, this is a really, really big, addition, we think, to the Power Platform.
If I recap, Derek, this sounds like a feature that many customers have asked for in the past. They want a centralized place, a store, if you will, a list, a directory, a catalog to publish all their apps, their resources. And so folks are maybe not duplicating effort. They can see what's available. You can promote things in the store. Is that, a great summary of what you just said? And just making sure our listeners understand.
That's exactly right. I'm going to actually take this down and, write that as part of our marketing copy. It's a very, very good description of what it was. So yeah, it is exactly that for people to kind of put these things in here and reuse it. And there's, all these other features that, we kind of get into, but that's really the basis of what the catalog is.
So follow-up question to that is, what does it look like? Is it branded as, oh, I can't change the colors, it's going to be purple because we love purple, or green, or what? Or can the customer completely brand this and make it look bespoke or match their own organization's themes and so on?
So the catalog itself is integrated into Power Apps and Power Automate. So in that case, it's actually very native to those platforms. So whatever you're actually doing with the styling of those shells, it's going to follow that. And then we are actually letting those teams like Power Apps and Power Automate design the catalog how they want it to look. And we'll talk a little bit about how this is going to Copilot Studio, and it's going to look completely different there. So you can really look at the catalog that we're building as more of like this package, right? That can just go into all these different like areas like Power Pages or Copilot Studio in the future. And it takes all that functionality along with it.
So an organization that wants to implement catalog in their Power Platform and footprint, like how does that sit as far as hierarchy? Is that at the tenant level, and then all environments within that tenant have to subscribe to the branding changes that applied at that tenant level, that overall level? Or does each environment get their own catalog and then they dictate the branding, the styling, and everything that applies? And does that bubble up ever to a tenant level? So like if we were talking about like CSS and cascading, like what's priority? What's below that? How do you inherit different styling and catalog templates?
That's a great question. And this really touches on one of the biggest values of the catalog. So let me first state that the catalog is built on top of the solutions framework. So the people are familiar with solutions inside a Power Platform. It is the recommended and actually safe and secure way to distribute things across different environments and really publish things and put them into production. This is how you practice proper application lifecycle management, right? Exporting things and importing them and putting them into different places without that oversight is actually pretty bad. So the catalog is built on top of the solutions framework. So the reason why I mention that is because you can just have one catalog, and we see that most customers are fine with just one catalog in a tenant. But if you wanted to spin up a catalog for every single environment that you have, because you need to split the catalogs by GA, or you need to split the catalogs by department, right? Something like that, you can totally do that. If we stick to the primary use case of just one catalog, if you have 10 environments, all of those environments can read from that single catalog. So if I'm in environment 9 and then somebody in environment 1 published something into the catalog and they're like, hey, environment 9 maker, I got something in there that you might be interested in. I just have to click catalog, inside Power Apps as an example from my environment, and I'll pull up the catalog that has everything across all environments. Now you can see how it's so much easier for me to pull something down, like basically install it in my own environment versus having somebody like, how do I distribute this across 9 different environments, right? Now you're making this a fetch operation from each maker in these environments. And the other awesome thing is that if you wanted to version or add like updates, right, to a solution, now you can publish an update into the catalog. And then the next time somebody from environment 9 comes into the catalog and sees your item, they'll see an update button, just like you would see in an iOS app store. And now they can pull your updates into their environment and and just all their solutions get updated. So now we are really introducing just this like cross environment distribution of these artifacts, and everything gets updated.
So quick question, who administers the catalog? Where does that sit?
Oh yeah, so the catalog has specific roles that need to be assigned to users using the catalog. So as an example, a general maker that doesn't have administrative access can't actually do things in the catalog. You have to actually give them a specific role to do something. So they have to have a role to be able to submit. They have to have a role to be able to actually go and like pull things down. But then there is an approver role and also an administrator role for the catalog itself. So how the administrator and the approver roles work is that by default, anything that gets submitted into the catalog has to have admin approval. You can turn this off if you like, inside the admin experience. But this is something that, I, as a PM, was always just trying to get things to go a little bit faster. Like that's kind of my job. I was very concerned about this admin wall for things to get published. And I was a little bit concerned that these admins would just have piles of things sitting in their queue, and it's not really like their priority. And then things that aren't going to make it into the catalog. But every enterprise company we're talking to, at some of them were almost just like, if you don't have this, we're not going to use it. Like we need this oversight over things getting in there. So it's actually like super interesting. But yeah, so the administrators can administer the catalog itself in terms of like settings like that. Like, do you want admin auto approval? But then within this, like we have this admin like app that I can talk about in a little bit, but this is where things get piled into and they can approve things and also look at specific errors.
So there, I've got 2 comments. One, I just wrapped up talking with several customers and the topic of catalog came up, and reinforcing what you said, not naming the customer, but they are in the financial banking and financial services industry, and they really love catalog. And they were asking, what else is coming? What can we do? What more is happening with catalog? That's one part of the question. I guess that's the second part. But the first part is, Doesn't the COE have something similar to this? So how do those two play together, and when should the customer choose yes, no, I should be using Power Catalog, I should maybe be using the COE? Give us a little bit of direction.
So here's the interesting thing is that, and by the way, when I joined Dataverse, the catalog actually already existed as a command line implementation, and it was in public preview, but there was no interface for it. So really what I did was put an interface, and now you don't actually have to use the command line. And we made it super easy for you to get stuff in and out of there. And it's to the point where some people are asking us like, hey, can you sort of redesign the solutions experience to be this simple, because you're able to just click through a couple wizards and everything is kind of working. But then as part of that the original public preview, there were a bunch of enterprise companies. I'm probably not going to name them all, but they had COEs who were basically building a catalog internally. And they wanted basically one native to Microsoft. Like, why don't you guys have this catalog? Why do we have to build this? Like, we need a place to be able to save our own versions of templates. Why don't you have this, right? And I think Gartner actually called out low-code platforms on their last report that, this type of catalog experience or template experience is now almost like table stakes, right? So while yes, some centers of excellence do have this functionality, they are really looking for something to be in the same like pane of glass, so to speak, right? Inside of Power Apps or Power Automate where they're working to be able to do all of this.
So Ken brings up a good point, right? Because you've got, maybe you had COE started getting in place and kind of, doing some of these features and everything. And then this feature comes out now. How do organizations change up their governance strategy when they're going to implement catalog as this new features? Is this a top-down approach, a bottom-up approach? How do you think that gets enforced amongst organizations?
I think that is going to be really dependent on the organization. As of right now, it does seem a little bit more top down from what I can see, or at least the people that I'm interacting with at these companies. It does look like it's from like a strategy perspective. It doesn't come from like a maker coming in and just saying, hey, we would like, to replace our thing with this catalog because it's better. It just more seems like it is a little bit higher up that's asking like, why don't we have this? So it does really very much seem like a little bit more of a tops down like strategy or demand, which is great for us, right? Because you always want those decision makers to be a little bit more like top down coming into that decision making.
So like Ken brought up a good point before where FSI, financial services, was looking at something like this or making requests about this. What other industries do you think benefit? Or is this kind of like, this is a blank slate, all industries, verticals will benefit from a tool like this? Or is there anything that you see certain industries will get more value out of it as in its current state, and as the roadmap progresses for this, new features will come in that may benefit different types of verticals?
It does really seem to be across industries. We have, I think right now, like 53 private preview customers. We're going into public preview in roughly a week, but it does span across very, very many industries. We actually have a lot of partners who want to use this just because when they are working with, let's say, 5 customers and they're building something kind of similar at its base and they want to distribute that across these 5 customers and customize it, the catalog allows them to go do that, right? They can just, put it into their development environment in one of their tenants and then just be able to distribute this across. They can also basically build like these component libraries, right? That's just like, hey, we want your maker team to be using these 5 components that we've customized for you. So now we're going to distribute it to your tenants across your environments. Now you can go use that. It really is across. We have now like government cloud coming to us and asking. And so we are actually still a little bit connected to App Source. You need to pull something down from App Source to get that admin experience in there. But as soon as we update that into PPAC, now we have government cloud coming in. It really does seem like it's a very generic feature that anybody can use.
Thank you for telling us that it's about to go into public preview. So by the time folks are listening to this, please go out and use Derek and the Teams feature. That being said, I'm curious. If I'm a maker and I think I have just built the greatest app known to humankind, can I go into the catalog and submit this and say, hey, Derek, you're the admin, publish this for me? So is there an approval workflow built into Power Catalog?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the case. You have built an app. Let's just say that it is very complex. You spent weeks and months putting this thing together. It has all these different connections and has all these triggers and does all these awesome things. Yes, absolutely. You can submit that. So basically what gets submitted into the catalog, I'm going to get a little bit technical, are unmanaged solutions. So if everyone knows the difference between unmanaged and managed are kind of more things that you've deployed. And let's just look at unmanaged solutions as maybe we can call them like a draft. Right, so you can submit any of your unmanaged solutions in the catalog. So this also implies that anything that's solution aware can go into the catalog. And most things that you're going to put in a Canvas app or a model app is going to be solution aware. But yes, after you submit it, by default, every tenant is going to have admin approval, like basically flipped on. You need an admin to go approve these things first before they get into the catalog. If an admin decides to flip that off, then things can go straight in. But again, like as I mentioned, a lot of enterprise companies want that type of oversight.
You're speaking my love language right here, right? Now it sounds like we're talking about building out the product and injecting and sharing innovation. So another question for you, I guess, is what's next? And more specifically, the way you described it sounds like there are some synergies with what our customers know as pipelines. Are there any insights you can share with us about how catalog and pipelines synergize?
Yeah, and you're talking about the Power Platform pipelines, right, that you use to
Correct.
distribute. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So I'm paired with basically the solutions team that also manages pipelines and ALM in general. And there are two things that are happening, and I don't have exact timelines on them. But first thing is there is going to be a publish to catalog step in the pipelines themselves. So when somebody's sending over a pipeline, there can just be a step that's like, hey, as you're pushing stuff through this specific pipeline, at the very end of it, tick a box. Do you want this to go into the catalog? And then it will submit into the catalog for you. On the other side of it, right now, how I built things is that you go to the solution screen under unmanaged solutions, there's a publish the catalog button, and that's how you push things in there. We also want to see if pipeline can be the method of distribution from that on the back end from the interface itself. So we're looking at a couple of those different things and how pipelines can kind of interact with the catalog. But again, because we're basically all sitting on top of that solutions framework, it seems like a pretty natural progression.
That is awesome news. I know a few folks who will be extremely, extremely happy about
Awesome.
that. Derek, a question. What advice would you give to organizations looking to implement the Power Catalog? Maybe how they get started, maybe some, please don't do this. Please do this.
Just like all products that are in private preview and we have super strapped engineering teams trying to get stuff through, I think there was a lot of learning along the way. But I'm going to say that implementation wise for the catalog, it's actually not super hard and it's going to get easier during the public preview phase and probably get even easier beyond that. How you implement the catalog now is that there's an app source app that's actually hidden. You can't go search for it on app source, but you can get it as a link from one of our help desk articles. And that app is called Power Platform Catalog Manager. You pull that down into your environment. You obviously need an admin to go into PPAC and go install that. But as soon as it's installed in any environment, the catalog is spun up basically across your tenant. So as I mentioned, any environment can read from that one catalog that you installed. But that's basically how the catalog gets installed is you install the catalog manager into your tenant, into an environment. And then the admin themselves have to go in there and manage users and things like that. But I think that's all sort of natural to the process. So that in and of itself right now, our private preview customers, I just send them like a couple of bullet points and say, can you please go do this? And I don't actually like call them or anything. The next thing I know, they're like, oh yeah, we're installed, we're good to go. So it seems like it's pretty easy to do. We are going to be moving away from the app source implementation to build this natively into PPAC to make it easier for you. And then now I'm realizing, hey, now we can actually support government cloud. I didn't know that, by the way, that government cloud, one of their restrictions is they don't, basically integrate with app source. So when I learned that, I was like, oh, good, we already have that on the road for you. But that even after that, at least the plan right now is to make the catalog a part of platform environments. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with platform environments. But basically what that's going to do is it's going to auto provision the catalog for you if it's not there so that you'll see these messages in the future. If you try to touch the catalog in the left nav or you try to publish something and the catalog isn't installed yet, you're going to see a little message that's like, hey, the catalog is now provisioning for you. Come back in a few minutes and we should be good to go. So I think over time, these things are going to get easier to implement. But as of right now, it seems super easy and I don't really see people having too many problems with it.
You mentioned the number of different things inside of there. I know that our government customers will be extremely happy to know that they will be getting catalog and that they will not have to wait for it or anything like that. And then two, you mentioned some different terminologies that I will say to our listeners, stay tuned. We have a lot of investments going into the platform. And as I've said in the past, what 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days ago, platform moves at lightning speed. Keep reading, keep learning, keep listening so that you can stay up to date with what's going to be changing. Over to my great friend right here, Sean, because I've been hogging the mic for a moment.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Hey, Derek, so actually going back a few questions prior, Ken mentioned, like and of course, like it's the greatest solution in the universe that Ken built, right? And we all agree. We take a vote on this. Two questions around this, actually. One, for that approval workflow, can you edit that workflow, or is that as is in the publishing process for admins to approve? And then two, say it really is the greatest solution, but I want numbers to back this up. Does the catalog provide any analytics on most used templates or least used templates so I can clean this thing up if nobody's touching this stuff?
Fabulous questions.
Thank you.
Great questions. And amazingly, you guys don't actually know that all these features exist. So thank you for asking all the right questions, because a lot of these features do exist. So in terms of the approval workflow, it really is just like when you click publish the catalog and you go all the way through the step-by-step wizard where you're filling in some metadata, you just click submit. And then it ends up in an admin queue, and the admin goes into that queue and just says yes or no. That's actually it. So there really isn't like a workflow baked in. We have had, we have one of our partners that I met at the MVP summit that was like, hey, we want to do a couple of other things like this and this and this. And then he almost himself said, actually, I can just build a flow for that. And I was like, awesome. You just let me know how you built that flow, and I'm going to put those examples in our documentation to show them how to do it. So yes, you can customize it with the flow. It's not native, right, to the catalog manager itself, but it's, also to me, it seems necessary. So then the second part of your question around analytics, so there is something called the My Activity page that you're going to see on the catalog. And when you click into it, it's basically, per maker or per user, you'll see all the things that you've submitted and all the things that you've fired and a bunch of metrics around that. Right? So there are going to be some analytics in terms of like how many people tried to download it. We're trying to see if there's some way that we can derive that your thing was used all the way at the end in like some sort of published solution to see if you can see almost like a conversion rate off of your template. Mm-hmm. So that is one way in which you can determine some metrics, but we do have on the roadmap ratings and reviews. I think that's probably the better way to determine whether or not, Ken actually did build the greatest app of all time, you know what I mean? So that is going to come. I think we had to basically parking that lot a little bit because we have so many things going on with Copilot Studio and our kind of push towards like AI and Copilot. But that is one of those features that's going to come with sub-ratings or reviews so that people can come in and actually rate and review your things. And I think that's usually the best proxy for, if something is the greatest of all time or not.
Now I'm curious, like Sean mentioned the analytics, and we talked a little bit about the various different roles. I want to ask about the personas as well now, right? So there's roles and there's personas. So in the catalog right now, if I'm an admin, obviously I can see all things, but I also have my makers and I have the folks who are my consumers of my apps. In terms of popularity of applications or gamification, who can see those particular numbers? And, I mentioned gamification specifically because what I've seen in other organizations is the race to be number one. I guess my question is twofold. Which roles, which personas can actually see those numbers? Do we allow various different ways? And is there any type of gamification inside of there, badging or anything like that says, Derek has just published a better app than Ken's greatest app ever?
Great question. I'm a big believer in gamification. I've been like gaming since I was like a kid. I actually am a semi-professional poker player, by the way. So I'm big fan of just gamification in general to drive specific behaviors from users, right? That's a really big thing. I would love to put that into the product now, but I feel like that's maybe a little bit more of like a run thing, and we're probably still in our crawl approach getting out of private preview. But certainly, we think there are going to be some gamifications in the future, as long as I'm the product manager on this product. But then getting back to your personas thing, yes, it's very important as product to make sure that we are paying attention to what those personas are. And you're right that our role is a little bit different than a persona, right? Roles get assigned to personas. Sometimes there's a bit of overlap. So that My Activity page, that analytics dashboard is again per user. So it really has nothing to do with the role. It's just like if you're a user, let's just say in Power Apps, there's 10 users, right? And let's just say that you have no permissions to be able to submit or acquire things from the catalog. When you click that My Activity page, you're going to be able to see the page, but there's going to be nothing in there because you haven't submitted or acquired anything. If you are a maker who is submitting things into the catalog, you will then see in the table of things submitted, all the stuff that you've submitted. Then for, let's just say, an end user who is not submitting anything, but just using the products, you're also not going to see anything because you aren't the one that like installed it or acquired it. So basically all that page represents is per user, things that you've submitted and required. So as long as you are taking those actions, you'll see data. If you haven't, you won't. And then from an admin perspective, that is a good question that we've had this request is, can you actually roll this data up to admins? We haven't put that, we have it on the roadmap. It's sitting there in the queue, but we haven't built that one yet. But that is going to be an important one to make sure that the admins who are looking across things can see basically performance across the entire tenant.
Awesome. Hey, Derek, this is cool. And I think between you and Ken, you just sparked a new LinkedIn skill of catalog influencer. So now we can go and boost these ratings, right? Like you can pay me for my influence on that. I appreciate it. Hey, look, so we're going to have to wrap up. We really appreciate your time on this. And what we like to do though is, like after catalog goes preview and we've got people using it and, we're a little further down the roadmap, I'd love to have you back on, talk about learnings, talk about, what's even further down the line from there and how customers are using it and maybe bring in some use cases if that sounds cool to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to come back on. We have a lot of stuff coming, especially the things that we're doing into Copilot Studio and all these, I guess, what you might call like quality of life improvements that we're getting from, all the feedback we're getting from our customers. So yeah, absolutely would love to come back on. Thank you for having me.
We know he's coming back now. He said the magic word. He said,
yeah, he did. Yeah. Cool. That is so cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Derek. Really appreciate it. And we'll be chatting soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Ken. It was nice meeting you both.